So today I'm joined by Gabriel Hobbs from Tacton, who's a provider of CPQ solutions. They operate in a space where complex solutions and also complex sales process is part of the everyday life. Gabriel has a long experience from sales and revenue operations in different leading roles. He argues that all sales processes should be repeatable and that trust in the data is at the core. Welcome, Gabriel.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the kind words and kind introduction.
So you've lived in Stockholm for 15-ish years?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
16 to be more accurate, but yeah, I've been living here for 16 years, having moved here originally from Canada, where I grew up and spent the majority of my childhood and studying in university. And spent a short, well, not so short, but 6 years living in London and England as well, starting my career there, working in both sales and marketing, and then followed the love of my life to Stockholm, and have been living here with her for the past 16 years.
And you mentioned Canada. I think it's Montreal, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So the weather outside today, minus whatever, 7-8 degrees, you're kind of used to that.
I'm very happy about this kind of weather, actually. I look forward to winter.
Oh, that's great. So I mentioned you argue that all sales processes should be repeatable.
Mm-hmm.
My hypothesis when doing research ahead of this episode was that we would talk about sales processes that couldn't be repeated. But you turned that against me, which I really enjoyed. And I find that being a really good ingredient for this discussion, because I think that every revenue leader should look for repeatability, and that repeatability is one of the ingredients of growth. Do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I thought it was an interesting insight that I had not reflected on, because it's ingrained in what I have been doing, what I've been working with for a long time. But upon reflection, I think, yeah, if you have a very simple sales process, you can make it repeatable. For example, by at the end of a call, asking the customer, would you like to buy now? You know, if you do that repeatably in every conversation, if you're selling a very simple product, you are likely to get yes on that answer a number of times, more times than if you don't ask it. Whereas if you get into a complex sales process, you can't ask, do you want to buy this now? In the first conversations, you might keep it for later on, but it's still part of your arsenal. But you need to have a set of steps that you go through. And as the complexity of your product increases, the complexity of those steps increases as well. But you still need that detailed set of things that you do in a sales process.
And then the natural question is why? So why is the repeatability important?
Yeah. Typically, you will find a formula that you see has led to success. So you've seen that, okay, we've won a number of deals, and we've lost a number of deals as well. That's the nature of sales. But then if you go and you look at the ones that you have won, you want to ask yourself, what have we done to win these deals? And then you kind of take a few steps back and understand, well, you know, we did a good qualification at the beginning. We asked them these types of questions. We ran them through a certain workshop. So we did a number of things that, perhaps we have something here. You might not have the full answer, but you'll have a series of events that you've done repeatably that have led to these wins that you have. And you might see that in the losses that you have, that there might be some things that you missed, or there might be some things that didn't go quite as you wanted it in the sales process. So I think it's an interesting analysis to do.
You mentioned a couple of them. Do you have more examples of things that you should look into to repeat?
I think if we talk about a complex sales process, is that what you're alluding to? Then I think, well, if I break it down like this, you would have different stages in an opportunity, and I think in each stage you will have a number of outcomes that you want to get before you move it to the next stage. And I think what's good is to have those clear outcomes defined, not only in terms of helping you manage your pipeline as a sales leader, that you know that if an opportunity is in stage 3, for example, then you know that we have done X, Y, and Z, and that we know that to move it to stage 4, we need to do step A or something along those lines. Now I ran out of letters because I went with X, Y, Z. But you need to do something else, right? And if I refer to sort of the sales process that I've been seeing at Tacton, but also in other more complex sales processes, you have the early qualification, where you would agree with the customer that once you have a both common understanding that there might be a good fit here between what you, dear prospect, are looking for and what we are offering, then we agree on, dear prospect, what we recommend. So you're kind of leading the prospect through the steps. They might not have purchased a CPQ in the past, or they've only done it once, whereas we have helped multiple customers purchase CPQs in the past. So we understand what are the typical questions that they will come up with. So once we have this mutual agreement that it is worth exploring further, your requirements meet with what we could potentially provide you a solution with, then we recommend, dear prospect, that we run, for example, 3 tracks. So we will look at the technical track, where we will speak with your technical people to understand how would our software fit within your IT landscape, what would be the requirements there. We want to run a business track, which is how do your business processes work? What are the outcomes that you're trying to do? And then see how our solution would fit into those and support you. Are you trying to increase revenue? Are you trying to decrease margin losses? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And essentially what we try and get out of that is how will we help you achieve those business objectives? And then in the case of Tacton would be the product track, for example, which is what is the product that you are selling, and then how would that fit into our solution, and how will we help you quote more accurately, and so on and so forth in Tacton. So that's just an example from going from stage 0 to stage 1. And when we get that buy-in, because we propose that that's what we should be working on together, when we both get the buy-in that, yes, that sounds good, let's do that. Let's schedule these meetings in the calendar with the respective stakeholders. Then we would say that, okay, this has moved to stage 1 because we've book those meetings. And then to take it to stage 2, we would have a set of other criterias that, as we discover some findings from these meetings that we've had, we would take those findings and bring it into the next step of the sales process, and so on and so forth. So it's always about continuously leading the prospect through a repeatable process, because we know that when you evaluate the CPQ, these are the things that you should be thinking about. If that answers your...
Oh, definitely. And I think what you're describing is also that gives the prospect kind of like a calmness and feels like, well, they know what they're doing, so I can just go with the flow and they will guide me through this sourcing process or purchasing process.
That's the idea. Yeah. I think you are the experts in the field that you, or as a salesperson and as an organization, you should be the expert in your field. Yeah. And you are really guiding them through that. And I think the best sales process are the ones where the prospect understands that and sees you as the experts, and that is accepting that you will also challenge them in that journey. That, okay, you do things this way today, fine, you want to see the same thing, but how we get to the outcome, let's challenge you. And I think that's for me, that's the best type of, and I think for any sales organization, that's the best approach. And it falls sort of on the challenger principle, that you're not just there to demonstrate what's in your product catalog, but you're actually helping the potential customer find a better solution, a good, if not better solution to what they have today. And that's really what they're buying into. They're paying for a piece of software or another solution. If you're, this is applicable to anything. They're paying for something to get a certain outcome. And how can we help them get to that outcome?
So I've myself led sales teams where initially there were no standardization or repeatability. And that leads me to a couple of questions. First of all, I had people in my team. Maybe I shouldn't call them divas, but they know what they're doing, and they think that the way they're doing things is the way of doing it. How can you manage, like, if person A says, like, this is the way I do it, this is what I know works, but you can in your data see that, well, that's not how it should be done, because your colleague is doing it this way and that's more successful.
Yeah, I've seen that as well, having led sales team and working closely to sales people and sales organizations as well. I think it's a balancing act, because there are some people that will not change. I've done this all my career. It's worked for me at companies ABC. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will work at company D, at your current company. So the balancing act is, will this person be willing to, to be brutally honest, will this person be willing to sort of take on board the feedback and say, this is the recipe to success. And if you look at how other people have done it at this organization, then we can help you be successful here as well. So there are some people that will buy into it, and I think most salespeople will buy into it. They will understand that if you sell certain products, it's going to be different at another organization, and you need to apply that. One reflection that I do have, however, on that topic is also the type of salesperson that you bring on board. And I think that's something that I believe fairly strongly about. So have you sold B2C products in the past? You're probably going to find it more difficult to come into a complex B2B sales process, because you're used to asking very early on in that question. If I come back to, do you want to buy now, dear customer, right? You don't think about all the other things that need to lead up to being able to earn the respect to ask that question. So finding the right salesperson is going to be sort of a fundamental piece to having a good team in place that will be able to take that repeatable process and putting into action. And then having a sales organization, having sales leaders that believe in that process as well and sort of implement it, that will ask the questions in their weekly forecast calls. Where are we on this opportunity? It's in stage 1. What are we doing? What is the next step to progress to the exit criteria to bring it to stage 2? And have that kind of a dialogue with the account executives. And I think that's where it comes out. Are they actually following the process? Because they know that, okay, well, I know that the exit criteria is this, and we have these meetings that will help us get an answer to it. Or, well, I'm just doing my thing and I don't really care about the sales process.
Yeah, and so I think this might be a leading question, but is there a fine line between, helping your account executives to follow a certain process rather than micromanaging them in their daily work?
So is there a fine line?
Yeah.
In sales, we always talk about that the salesperson should be the CEO of their territory. Or not always, but we talk a lot about it. And as the CEO of your territory, you have a responsibility to drive business forward. And if you've been provided with a recipe to drive that business forward, you should put the odds on your side. Is it micromanaging? I don't know. Is it coaching to success? Again, I think it depends on how receptive the individual will be to, or the salesperson would be to the type of coaching. And then it leads to what type of conversation that you have. If you have somebody that's too stuck in their ways and they're an okay salesperson, is it a good fit? I think that's a genuine conversation to be had at some point in time, because coming back to the repeatability question that you ask, I think there is generally, or there is a repeatability sort of element to sales, and you should understand that you should follow that process, not as a straight line. Sales is not a straight line. You have to adapt along the way, but if you have a North Star of what you are aiming for, as the CEO of your territory, you will be able to navigate that fluctuation.
You made an example, I think a good example, when we spoke ahead of this episode. You said, like, we don't say, I think this is what you said. We don't tell them how to perform a demo, but we say that there is a demo element in the process.
Yeah, no, but that's just one step. Every getting to the demo is often what a prospect, they fill out a demo request form on our website. I think we even have a form that's called demo request. So they're expecting a demo. But we don't want to show the demo on day one. And I think most complex sales processes advise against the demo on day one, because you want to make it as relevant to the prospect as possible. So I lost my train of thought there, but the demo really is I think it's in stage 2, if not 3, where we would first do potentially a reverse demo, where we ask them to show us, how do you work today?
Oh, that's interesting.
What are your challenges with how you work today? And then that gives us, again, the knowing that we will do that demo in stage 3, you then can prepare for that demo. And again, it depends on the company. Some companies, we would expect the account executives to do the demos. I've worked for organizations like that where we enable the salespeople. The product is not so complex that the salesperson can do a demo. But again, the reverse demo, understanding what you're going to show in the demo is the most important thing. It's not the demo itself, because you could show the customer 1,000 features, but they're really only they only have a problem with 2 things. So if you just nail those 2 things, then you've solved their problem. The rest is just a distraction.
I enjoy I'm going to bring that with me home, like the reversed demo. I like that. I think we've used it sometimes without thinking about it like that, but it's a really good way of bringing the customer, the prospect and the selling company together around the common problem.
Yeah. For me, it's, again, thinking back of my time in sales, that's been the key.
Yeah.
Because you really understand how they work. Because I think the prospects they have a way of working, they have something in their mind, and if they don't see how that would translate into the other system, then it will just be too abstract. And which I think is interesting now, being in revenue operations, I have one component where we take care of the systems within an organization. We are buyers of complex software systems. I am exposed on a regular basis to sales processes. And if a vendor cannot alleviate my concerns or help me visualize how I will be working when we switch to the other vendor, I don't feel comfortable to make that decision. And I think it's the same for our prospects or our customers when we're on the other side of the table.
I'm smiling a little bit because that's one of the perks of working with sales or have been working in sales, that all of a sudden you enjoy the sourcing processes or the purchasing process as well, because you get interested in like how do they sell their product, and it's
super interesting. Yeah.
It is.
And you see all flavors of it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You see the really good ones, and then you see the ones that you lost me. Sorry. Thank you for the call. Oh. And you see it down from being cold calls. I mean, we bring it down to that level. The ones that have a process around cold calls, and it really trickles down. Yeah.
My co-founder, he told me the other week, because I had a cold call calling me, and I picked up the phone and I talked to them, and after we hung up, Anton, he said like, "You're a dream to call," because I'm happy to talk to salespeople. I want to hear what they have to say, especially if they have a solution that might be of interest to me. But it's also interesting to hear how they pitch it, etc. So
I love it as well. Yeah. And for me, it's also, I get loads of emails. I just delete. Yeah. Right? Somebody calls me. Yeah. I give them, I think being in sales, like you said, I give them that little space, but I give them...
Yeah, not too much.
Not too much.
They need to, at least me, they need
to earn the next 30 seconds, the next minute, right? And don't be shy. Is this a sales call? Yeah. No, it's not. I'd rather hear, yes, it is, right?
Yeah. If it's not a sales call, why are we talking?
What is it? Yeah, why are you calling me?
Yeah, that's interesting. So coming back to the repeatability then, I think as a sales leader or as a RevOps leader, you come into an organization where there is no repeatability or no set sales process. Or, as in many other cases, you're building up a new company. You know that you need sooner or later get to that repeatability. But if it's just a big mess, where would you start?
Depends. It depends on the priorities of the organization, obviously, and what challenges that that have been identified that need to be prioritized, and that varies quite a lot. Where would I start if it was around the sales process? I think this is where I can wear two hats in my position. If I rely on my sort of sales background hat, then it would be very much about understanding what have we done to win these deals. And that helps you start designing the recipe to win a deal. Then it would be a question of the sequencing of it. When should we do what? And I don't think there is a right or a wrong answer there. But yeah, you would want to have an understanding of, coming back to the example, you might not want to do the demo before you've done the reverse demo. Instead of you do a quick demo, 10-minute first, then you do the reverse demo, then you do an in-depth demo. That's an approach as well. But understanding from the teams that have been there, so even if you just join a company will have some business, understanding what we've done, understanding the product, understanding the personas that you're selling to. I think that's another element. Understanding the industries that you're selling to. So really understanding your solution and what value you're bringing to the prospect. And I think it comes back to that. Now I'm just thinking aloud, if you can allow that for me. There are different types of salespeople and sales leaders for that matter. For me, sales has always been about really understanding two things. Number one, and I take the analogy, what's in my briefcase? Because I used to sell physical products, and I would go around with catalogs. What do I have in my catalog that I can sell? What what do these products or services solve for the customer? To understand what does it solve to the customer, you need to understand the customer's perspective. What are going to be their challenges, so that you can then say, okay, you have these challenges. This is what I can offer you as a solution.
This is the segue into the next topic that I was hoping for.
Okay.
Because I figured we'd talk a little bit about data.
Yeah.
And I think it was your CEO who told you when you started at Tacton, like, I need to be able to trust the data.
Yeah, that was one of the first things I identified, and that he told me in the first 30 days, or I think it was within the first sort of 7 days of when I joined Tacton. That was the most important. He needed to run his forecasts. He needed to run the sales process out of, we use Salesforce, but out of our CRM. And he did not rely on the data that was in the system.
How did you approach that? Because it's a big task.
It is. Fortunately, I have done it a few times. And fortunately, I am a fan of CRMs, a fan of data. I like working with data. And more specifically, I like getting a CRM up to a point that you can rely on the information that is in there. How did I approach this? Like I would, again, coming back to sales, like anything. Okay, we have a problem with data. That's the high level pain that he, as my customer, is having. Then I want to understand, okay, well, why? What are you trying to do? I'm trying to run my forecast out of Salesforce so that I can, at any point in time, go into the system and I can run my organization and make decisions. Fine, that's the outcome. The pain, the outcome. And then it goes into, okay, well, why are we having these pains? And then doing an understanding of the challenges that we had, and then proposing some solutions that catered to those specific problems, and then setting up. I think this is the next phase. You understand the problem, understand the outcome, understand what is causing the problem, coming up with solutions to that, but always catering to the fact that we're dealing with people. And I think that's an important thing. The CRM is just a tool. There are people that need to input information, which I think will be an interesting segue for the AI part later on. But there are still a number of things that people need to do. And when you deal with people, they will not always follow the instructions. You try and limit instructions and build them into the CRM so that they are guided through the process. And if they do something wrong, then you put a little flag and you let them know about it. And then the last step for me that is important, once you've understand the whole process, you set up what I call hygiene reports. And these are reports that are essentially sent out to me or to my team once a week, or to the reps themselves, kind of saying, hey, you're doing things, or you haven't updated things, or this data doesn't make sense. And then you address those outliers. So you build for the 80%, and then you have these hygiene reports for the 20%, hopefully less than that. But you build these hygiene reports, and then you monitor them. And then can I close the gap on that through better automation, better instructions in the system? If yes, we do that. If not, you continue to monitor and you try and educate people to do that. So that's the approach that I've taken. Again, in a repeatable, take me, revenue operations, Gabriel, put me into another organization that is having similar challenges around data. The causes of the causes of the challenges will not be the same. The processes will not be the same. The outcome might not be the same, but you apply the same kind of due diligence and investigative approach.
Yeah, I think the data is, well, it's at the center of many processes and many functions of a company. But in RevOps, it's interesting because you mentioned the CEO wants his forecast or her forecasts. I mean, shit in, shit out. You're not going to get the correct forecasts. We're soon going to talk about your AI layer. AI is very sensitive to poor data, and we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, okay.
But then also the third thing that we just talked about, repeatability. I mean, if you don't know what works and what doesn't work, then you risk repeating poor behavior or poor parts of the process, I suppose.
Yeah, no. Shit in, shit out is, that's the common one with data and other things in life. If you put in the safeguards in place to ensure you have good data, and I think the steps that I've defined are the key ones, you will end up with a CRM system that is reliable. And I think that's one of the things that at least I and my team pride ourselves on. We have new colleagues that come in. When I've been speaking with potential hires that have come from other organizations, they talk about Salesforce instances that are not usable to drive the business. Yep. It's a fairly common theme. You read on LinkedIn and everybody talks about their CRM system, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, we don't have that problem. We have a very clean environment. We have a very reliable environment. And what I love about that is that the questions that you get about the data evolves as the quality of your ecosystem improves. So it's no longer, do we trust the AR number that's in Salesforce? It's now, okay, we want to analyze in which segments we have had the highest win rates and what has been blah, blah, blah. And, okay, that's easy to answer. That's easy to answer. I think people always say to me that I'm always saying it's easy because it is, because we've done the groundwork. Yeah. Doing the groundwork, that's the tricky part.
Yeah, I used to work in an organization where we spent a significant amount of time just discussing whether the numbers were correct, and we came into the meetings with different numbers, and that drained all, good forward-looking discussions. Yeah. It's just about the data.
I've been part of that as well. Oh. But I'm not part of that anymore. No. But we're asking different questions. Yeah. Questions that drive the business forward, that drive revenue.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, just to summarize, you need to do the one-time push you just described to fix the data, and then make sure you keep working to keep the data good.
It's not a one-time. I think that's the thing. You're never done.
No.
You're never done because you're dealing with people, and people will always find ways to break your process. Yeah. So how do you mitigate that? I think is interesting. Again, automation or manual review and education, two paths. If you make too much automation, people will get angry and they will have another type of behavior. Education, you don't do a system stop, but you rather, this is why you do it. You guide them through the process by adding a field that is visible there so they understand that they have to do that. I think I'm much more of a fan of that rather than what's called in Salesforce validation rules, which is you just stop them every single time. You can't do this if you haven't done that, blah, 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 blah. People hate that. Yeah. But if you build it into the process so that it's visually appealing, then it's a no-brainer. So you're never done. That's the thing. In any system that you implement.
Do you think systems like Gong and Glyphic, will they improve the data in the CRM systems?
They have the potential, but it will not happen by magic. You need a process. What is it that you want to get out?
I think, a lot of people are expecting magic, so they might be disappointed. But I think if you apply the correct process and also get the people to work with you, we can see changes for the good.
Yeah, no, I agree. A lot of people do expect magic. You buy a system and it'll solve your problems. Actually, no. When you buy a system, when you first deploy it, what I say is this is when the fun starts. Yeah. How do you make sure that it continues to deliver value? Yeah. And all the things you did not think about in your first implementation, how are you going to address those? Because you know there's going to be some of them.
Yeah. And that would be our segue, the next segue into the AI layer that you've built in-house on, I think, prospecting data, right?
So we have one primary layer right now that we've built, which is to support our prospecting efforts. Yes.
You want to evolve?
I certainly can. Yeah. I think this is a low-hanging fruit that is being discussed in most sort of online forums and so on and so forth, which is around the ICP analysis or the ideal customer profile analysis. And it's been a challenge that we at Tacton have had for some time, at least when I joined Tacton, not understanding what is our ICP. That we had a very clear definition of it. The question or the challenge was, how do we find all the companies that fit our ICP? And I think in many organizations, up until, I would say the last 2 years or so, I think there's been a huge advances in that space in the last 2 years, if not the last year. You relied on your typical database tools, Dun & Bradstreet or ZoomInfo or Cognism, where you just get essentially the download of Companies House for the UK or Alla Bolag for Sweden. There you have your NAICS codes or your NACE codes, and then you try and find companies within that. But everybody who's been working in sales and who've been working with these types of tools knows that the quality of that data is questionable. Or not, it's not questionable, but you will get a low hit rate. So out of a list of maybe 1,000 companies, if you're lucky, 500 of those, 600 of those will actually be a good fit according to your ICP, even if you've used the NACE codes, because those are not reliable. Yeah. So you rely on these databases, which is a dump from the country's company registries, essentially. So now what we've done is we've added a layer where we've built a prompt which clearly defines the criteria for what we see as a good fit versus what is a bad fit for Tacton. You can do that for any organization as long as you know what your ICP is. And we have run all companies through this, what we call the ICP Analyzer tool, and it has helped us segment those into, we have 3 levels. You have good fit, you have workable fit, and you have poor fit. So now we basically have an understanding of all manufacturing companies that we could find from these database tools. So you still need a source of a long list of accounts that you run through your ICP Analyzer, and then you get the good fits and the workable fits and the poor fit. And then you focus your marketing spend, your sales efforts, all your energy that in the past you would have spent on those 1,000 companies. Now you're spending it on the 600, but you know that those are real potential good customers.
And does that layer look at other signals or data points than you could fetch from Dun & Bradstreet?
We do look at other signals. Yes, we do. Not through this tool. I know there are tools that do that, and I think this is where it gets interesting right now. There's a huge space that is developing where you're combining your ICB fit with your signals, and there are different ways to solve it. But to answer your question, yes, now we know what the good fit ones, and we do have a layer where, for example, we look at intent, website visits of the accounts that are within our good fit, and then we can drive an account-based marketing approach, but again segment into the good fit. So yes, we're not just looking at good fit; we're looking at other signals as well.
That's very interesting. You mentioned you had two parts of this product or AI layer, yeah?
We have 3 parts.
3 parts even, yeah.
So it's 3 agents that look at 3 different things. And again, that now we started with 1, and then we moved on to 2 because we could. And I think this comes back to what I said. Does it make sense for a person to do it, or does it make sense for AI to do it? And we've now identified 3 clear areas where we're having problems. I think it comes back to we had challenges, and we used AI to solve those challenges. So the 2 other ones that we look at is, we call it the industry selector. And it basically, rather than rely on the Zoom Info or the Dun & Bradstreet or the NACE codes traditional approach, we've defined a series of industries or products that different companies manufacture. And then we ask AI to evaluate in which industry does this correspond to, and then it just tags it in Salesforce for us. So we've automated, so it's pushed back into Salesforce, and then we can. It's a huge gain for territory assignments for account executives. This account executive is responsible for this particular vertical. We know that all these companies have been analyzed by AI. It takes away the subjectivity. So in the past, we've had that. We gave the same list to 2 people as an example. They were not aligned on what is a good fit. They were not aligned on what is an industry, and so on and so forth. Whereas now with AI, you take away that subjectivity, then you could question, yeah, but is it reliable? And then it's like, at some point, it's reliable to 90%, 93, 94, 95%. Are you happy with that? Yeah. Is it going to make some odd answers? Yeah, likely, but that's a small percentage. So we have the industry selector, and then we had rules of engagement around which sales team should run an opportunity. Should it be North America? Should it be EMEA? And I think this is a fairly, at least in our RevOps discussions, it's a fairly common topic. So we now have an AI agent that basically analyzes where the ultimate parent company, again, something that you could not find so reliably in these database tools or even searching on the websites. I mean, we're now finding things like, oh, okay, great that AI has analyzed this because they found some stuff that is really good. So now it helps us if we have a conflict where a rep is working, for example, in North America on an EMEA-based headquarter. Because it's all automated and pushed into Salesforce, we are now monitoring that in Salesforce, and we can then take proactive responses to that rather than be reactive. And it always comes back to the individuals in most sales organizations. Everybody has good intentions generally when they work, right? So if they had this kind of conflict, it was not to try and cheat the system. It was just that they didn't have access to the information. If I can make one comment.
Yes, please.
Because you talked about that AI is
reliable and good data, right?
It needs to have good data. Yeah. And I think, yes, but what is the most important thing is the prompt that you are building, that you are putting in the safeguards like you would program in software. A prompt, you are basically giving a set of instructions, and you need to be very specific, or the more specific you are with your instructions in the prompt, the better the output you will get. Yeah. Otherwise, you are leaving to AI, the opportunity for interpretation. And I've seen that. Like I said, return the country in the ISO format. And then it returns United States or it returns United States of America. And then when you're trying to update a pick list field in Salesforce, the system crashes. So you have to, never return something if it's not ISO. If you are uncertain, So it's what you put in is not as important as the quality of your prompt and how detailed you are in your instructions to avoid the hallucination sort of that AI can or does produce.
Though getting better. But I think what I was referring to, because I mean, obviously you can set up the guardrails, which will prevent it from some hallucinations. We are now building an interesting intelligence layer upon our product that will be partly ML based. And in that case, and in those instances, it's really important that we're feeding it with the right data to train the model. Otherwise, it's going to get really dirty and ugly. Yeah. So, but yes, I give you right in what you're saying.
But then comes up the discussion about having agents validate what the first agent has produced, and then speaking back to the other agent if it has hallucinated and so on. Because what we've seen is that the shorter the instructions are, the more specific that agent is on a specific topic, the higher the quality. If you ask it to do too many things, the quality and the risk of hallucination increases.
Yeah. So we're actually running out of time. Time flies when you have fun, as we say in Sweden. I don't know if that works in English, but almost.
Time flies when you're having fun, absolutely.
Yeah. But just to conclude some of the things we've talked about, how do you prevent a process from limiting, the progress rather than propelling it or excelling it?
I would say accepting that the process is not a straight line, but that you keep the process as your North Star and you adapt along the way.
And what would you say, like, if it's possible, like make a checklist of, this you should keep flexible, while this you should be strict and rigid on, like how to perform and how to do and what to do?
The exit criteria that you define in your sales process, I think those are non-negotiable. Or if you do bypass them, that you are flagging that as a risk in your opportunities. You haven't got the economic buyer alignment call. That's risky. Because at the end of the day, when you're negotiating at the end of the quarter, if you don't have that contact, the likelihood of winning decreases.
Yeah, I hear you. Is there something that companies should stop measuring? Because sometimes, let me rephrase that question. Sometimes data can give you a sense of, calmness or a sense of control that's actually fake or not true.
I don't think you should stop measuring, but you need to understand, again, it's the context of why are you measuring something. So, as a sales leader, you can measure everything down to the number of phone calls. But if you have a rep that is on track to meet their target, they have enough pipeline to overachieve their quota or to achieve their quota, then you don't need to talk about the number of meetings they've had or the number of calls that they are making. You have a rep that is not or at risk of reaching their quota, they don't have enough pipeline, then you take it a level down and you start looking at that data. So again, I think it's what is the problem? And then if you have access to reliable data, then you can choose to either dig down or not.
I think those are very good closing words from a guy who likes data, right? Oh. So, Gabriel, thanks for coming into the pod and letting me spend time with you and get a great conversation.
No, well, thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
Definitely.